Hi, I'm Mike Dawson, and I would like to talk to you about why I think that the poet and author Allen Ginsberg should be added to our class syllabus. Now, while I do not agree with a lot that Allen Ginsberg has to say, I do agree that he had a major impact on American literature, and I agree that all those that have a major impact on American literature should be looked into as significant authors. How are we supposed to grow if all we ever do is read only what we agree with? Allen Ginsberg was born in 1926 and he died in 1997. He's introduced to us in our textbook on page 1414, and his defining work, the poem Howl, is probably one of the most candid pieces of American literature. One that would make his mentor through the ages very happy indeed. He set Walt Whitman up on a pedestal, calling him the American poet's mentor. And it's in some of the same veins that Allen Ginsberg himself writes. Whether it's his freestyle or whether it's his candid approach to writing, both hold sway over Ginsberg's work. Interestingly enough, in an interview with Jeremy Isaacs on BBC Two's Face to Face program, is called America's Best Known Poet. Now remember, this is coming from the British, from a British program, and he's being called America's Best Known Poet. Interestingly enough, one, we didn't cover him in this class, and two, I did a random selection of 30 undergraduates. Ask each one of them the same questions. Have you heard of Allen Ginsberg? And if so, have you read any of his works? I surveyed 30 students, and of those 30 students, only 10% of them had heard of Allen Ginsberg, and only 3% of those students, that's only one student out of the 30, ever read any of Ginsberg's works, and that was his poem Howl. Now, Walt Whitman wanted for the American author to become more vocal, to become more active, to put more of himself into his work. Now, I don't think he would have ever dreamed of someone like Allen Ginsberg, or perhaps he did. Because Allen Ginsberg did follow in the steps of Walt Whitman with his style, which was a free verse. Walt Whitman wished for the American poet to be more candid and to be without reservation, to say what was on his mind. Indeed, Allen Ginsberg did do this, to the point that a lot of people called him rude, crass, and many other things. Of course, they said almost the same thing 100 years before about Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman is definitely in our studies. He goes hand in hand with Allen Ginsberg. They even had some of the same flaws I'm not going to go into here. But nearly 100 years after Whitman, Ginsberg wrote and released his defining piece, Howl, and that piece shared some of the same reviews as Walt Whitman's writing. Now, Michael McClure said, recalling the day that Howl was released, that Ginsberg began reading it in a small and insistently lucid voice. Ginsberg said, I have seen the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked. You know, William Carlos Williams, in his introduction to the poem Howl, said that they were about to go through hell when they read this poem. That is because Ginsberg put his feelings of his personal hell into this poem. He was very candid with his statements, open about his homosexuality, as Walt Whitman was nearly 100 years before. And amazingly enough, instead of being run out of town, both of them were applauded for their exuberance in their writing and their candid statements. Say what you like about Allen Ginsberg and Walt Whitman, but there is no doubt that both have had a very real effect upon American literature.